welcome to the aptly named Five Stones podcast.
Yes, it's aptly named.
Aptly. I'm Raymond Modulin, the Real Estate Monkey.
I'm Joe Trester, the Real Estate Advocate.
And with us...
wait, he's not here.
He's not here. Our third wheel is not here today, so Joe and I'll...
The loudest member of the group.
Wing it. Without Mr. Hedegaard with us, the Great Dane. So you brought up a good topic about scaling your business.
And we've talked about it a few times in the past, but it's kind of hitting home a little more right now.
Oh, before we get started, what are you smoking today, Joseph?
I am still smoking San Latanos, but I went from the bowl. They have a new Maduro.
Same one from last week?
No, it's a different cigar, obviously, but same brand, different type. This is a Maduro blend.
I only say that because I beat you to the punch, because what I'm smoking is the exact same cigar that's still the AJ Fernandez New World Maduro, and I knew that you would say, same one from last week?
Yeah.
No.
I mean, it's just...
Same brand.
Same brand,
new
different cigar.
Okay. So that I just...
We're cheap. We're not that cheap.
We're not that good that can make a cigar last a week either. No.
So, anyhow, getting into the topic of scaling the business. Back when we were doing the radio show and subsequent videos on YouTube, we've talked about scaling in the past and things to concern yourself with, avenues to think about. But now it's kind of hitting home because we're looking at potentially scaling up a lot of things that we're doing.
Yeah. I think the biggest mistake that I made and that I learned from, and that I think people should honestly think about before they even start the business. And we've mentioned several times before that there are actually two different types of businesses that a person could start.
Yes.
The first one, which I guess was a new name, but now it's an old name, because I got reprimanded by a podcast I was on the other day, called it a lifestyle business. And he said, we don't call it that anymore. Now it's called... He had some new name for it.
Well, they say that they don't call it that, but he knew exactly what you were saying, right? So clearly it worked.
So the first one's the lifestyle business, which I would say 90% of all small businesses are that type of business. And what that is, if you don't know, is a business where you create yourself a job that you like, that you probably get paid pretty well at, that you can raise a family and have a life, but when you go to retire, there's no real value to the business.
It just goes away.
And I would say the best example that probably you know of, but have never really thought it, would be like an attorney.
Yes.
An attorney is a great lifestyle business. When most attorneys retire, there is no value in their firm because they are the value.
Yep.
So when they retire, like you said, the business just shuts down. And you can think of that in almost every kind of one of those, dentists,
yep.
Small doctors, not like midget
doctors. It's when the business is predicated on one person and their intellectual ability or their skill set themselves.
And then the second type of business is a business that is scalable, that could potentially have a life longer than the founder of the business. My mistake was I created a lifestyle business for me, and then about 10 years into it, have saddled you with the problem of trying to convert that to something that is not so much me anymore, but rather us, and could potentially survive me stepping away and leaving,
yep.
And the school still be a viable business for somebody, whether it's my son, whether we sell it through an exit, whether it gets acquired by another school. That's become a big problem, is converting it from, hey, Raymond was the focus and everybody recognized me. And I remember I've had people call it, is this Raymond School? You know, and we're slowly and painstakingly trying to step me away and bring more light to the company name, and that's been a huge problem.
Yeah, it's difficult. I mean,
Yeah.
it just, especially when you're starting in a small geographic area and trying to expand, like, it's very easy to expand in the geographic area where everyone knows you.
Yeah.
But putting enough clout on what we have to go places where they don't know Raymond, they don't know Joe, they don't know Colin, they don't know us. Our
They
reach
don't
is
know
only
the
so far.
business owner.
Yeah.
You know, we had that real big smack in the face in our first state that we entered several years ago, that it didn't go gangbusters like it was doing here, and that's what kind of really solidified the fact that, hey, they don't know us over there.
Yeah.
You know, here people can associate me because that's how I built it with the business. There, it's just another school that is competing with everybody else.
Yeah.
So that scaling process is rather difficult. One, to back away as being the front guy, and two is to become a known entity in another geographic. Now, we're in the middle of acquiring a second company that's in 14 states.
Yes.
So that's going to be another factor of, on the way here this morning, driving in, I usually listen to a podcast. I've got about a 50-minute drive. I actually turned the podcast off and spent 50 minutes thinking, we've got like 100 hours of work in the next 2 days I need to do.
Yeah, and that's just scratching the surface.
Yeah. Because we've got to revamp websites, we've got to rebrand websites, we've got to, deal with contractors that are in other states that were with this company that are now going to be with our company. How are we going to do all of that?
Well, that and creating the plan of, okay, we want to rebrand, but we don't want to rebrand to the point that the old brand is no longer recognizable to the people that are used to using it.
Yeah.
And, it's...
They call that goodwill. When
Yeah.
when you're looking at buying a business and you buy a name, there is a certain fixed amount of that purchase price called goodwill. And like you said, you don't want to buy McDonald's tomorrow and change the name to Ray's Burgers because people are going to go, I don't know who that is.
Yep.
And you've lost all of the years that was spent building
The brand.
that brand. So there's got to be a slow changeover so that people get used to going, oh, well, it was that. You remembered, now it's this. So that we don't lose clients over that. I went through that in the corporate world. I worked for a company called United Technologies that was bought, Fortune 50 company, bought by another Fortune 50 company called Lear. And I remember we used to answer the phones, United Technologies. Mm-hmm. Then for like 4 or 5 months, we answered the phone Lear, formerly United Technologies. And then eventually they just went to Lear.
Yeah.
So using that kind of concept, you had the great idea of taking their logo, and now their logo now says powered by Real University, so that they can start seeing that name come through there.
Yep.
And that's how we're going to have to rebrand that company. Now, we're not changing the name yet. But we already have plans in 5 to 6 to 7 months down the road to completely do away with that company name and fully absorb it under ours.
Yes.
So, and that just doesn't happen.
No, it's not just flip the switch. There's a lot of there's just a lot that goes into it, because one little slip up and you've kind of devalued incredibly what it is you purchased.
And the thing that I think most people don't really get, and I'll put you on the spot here.
Yeah, please do.
How many times have I called you after 9 p.m. at night?
Yeah.
to go, shit, did we think of this? And you went, yeah, I've already started thinking about that. So I mean, It's not a 9 to 5 gig.
No, it's not. I mean, I don't know whether it's a good thing or a bad thing that we are both kind of wired the same way. I call it the news ticker that kind of is always going through our brain. It's just like ticking along there, a whole list of crap. And it just keeps cycling around. You check one thing off and 10 more things go on that ticker, and it just keeps going.
I know the other night, instead of texting you, I sent an email because I didn't want your phone to go off at 1:30 in the morning, and you replied at 1:36.
Yeah.
And I thought, what the hell's he doing up? And then
the same thing I am. Yeah.
I mean, I saw that email. You replied like 6 minutes later at 1:30 in the morning. So, yes, that news ticker concept is one that I've stolen and have told people that. Yeah. It's constantly, oh, I thought about this. Are we thinking about, the legal aspect of being in 14 states?
It just comes down to, for me, it's create lists and prioritize the lists and just work on checking stuff off. I mean, that's the only way I know to work through it.
Yeah.
I guess I have an analog brain. I'm a list person. I like to have that list of things, and I can add to it, I can take off of it, and it kind of gives me an idea of where we are, where we've been.
That is something, if you're having organizational issues out there, that maybe you might try, because I do the same thing. I've got to-do lists that I add to, and then I try and prioritize them. And the very first thing I do in the morning, usually that 8 to 10 a.m., is what was on today's list. And then this is the important thing, and do it first. I always try and do the most important thing first part of the day.
And I kind of view it as my form of journaling.
Yeah.
Mapping through everything. And in my former world, when I was still, in sales, I still have years of my planner where I write down every different meeting I had, all of my notes for what needed to be done that day. I mean, I can go back through and tell you everything I was doing for that entire year.
I used to do that. I used to keep notes when I was on the phone and had meetings. But honestly, I did not find the value for me because I very seldom went back and reread notes. Maybe if I'd have done that, that would have been better. But
what we do now, it's different.
Yeah, I cross-reference my calendar with my to-do list.
Yeah.
Because I try and put everything in my calendar so that I don't miss something, and time block. And usually 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. when I first get up, I'm at home. I do a lot of stuff, and then 8 a.m. I get here, and I do the priority stuff. So, scaling the business becomes tough. And I think one of the key things to scaling the business is systems.
Yeah.
Who's in charge of what, clearly delineating, like who reports to the states, who handles help desk, and then have a system for that so that everything can get done uniformly, which is not necessarily an important issue if it's a small one-person shop. No, but when you're starting to think about going into 14 states and we have to report 14 to 14 state entities, of course completion, we better have something written down that says, here's when you do it, here's how you do it, here's the form you use, so that, one, we can interchange people in case someone leaves, and two, that it's just memorialized.
Leave the breadcrumbs.
Yeah.
You got to leave the trail of what to do and how to do it. Because that's also how you create value when you have a business that you potentially are going to sell down the road. Having all of that documentation that you can show someone, this is how it's done, this is what we do, this is what's going on, adds value.
That's a good point. I was going to bring that up. Especially if you are in your exit strategy, like you said, being able to go, here's our manual on reporting and help and, refunds and all that, so that the next person down the line can pick up and keep the value at whatever you sell it two.
And please understand that that doesn't necessarily mean, I mean, it's not 1998. That doesn't mean you're going to have a binder this thick sitting somewhere. It's probably a PDF document that you have saved that you can adjust as needed, but it's something that you can just drop in that email and send to someone, and they have the whole playbook.
And the other good thing is you need to start thinking about some collaborative software.
Yes.
You know, you and I have gone through two or three different things. We've used Slack, we use Google Teams, we use Google Docs. That allows more than one person to, like, when you have an idea, go in and alter the document. And we had that issue.
We were doing that the other night.
And I looked at the screen. I'm like, what the hell? Why is that highlighted? And then started typing, and I'm like, talk about a ghost in the machine. And then I realized
it was me.
You were on the same document I was on, and I'm like, that scared the crap out of me, dude, to see stuff start appearing. And I thought, I was just thinking that, and it appeared.
Well, and I also think it's especially important. I mean, you know, we live 45 minutes from each other. If we're going to be in 14 other states, having the ability to collaborate that easily with someone in Oklahoma.
Yes.
I mean, just boom. Or in most of us in the last few years have learned the loveliness of like GoToMeeting or Zoom, or Microsoft Teams has that ability as well, to be able to hop on and instantly talk with someone face to face.
Well, we did that the other day as a test run, and gone are the days of telling your account executive, hey, jump on an airplane and go see the Kansas City company. Now, like you said, in a matter of seconds, you can hit them up on IM and say, I'm sending you the link, get on, and talk to them face to face, and then get off. You save money and time and all kinds of things, and all that goes straight to the bottom line.
Yeah, so and it allows you to take that money in, put it somewhere where it can make you money.
Right.
I do think there's still, don't get me wrong, there's some importance in visiting some of these other places and seeing them, you know, every once in a while, so that they need to understand that they're still important. But it's not one of those things where you're hopping on a plane once a week and going here.
So the cool thing is, also to further that, I think I've got 14 new states to go vacationing in now.
Yes.
Because, like you said, now we can go see a contractor in Florida and have a meeting with them and say, hey, we're going to meet you face to face and talk about strategy. And while I'm there, I'm going to play golf in Florida.
Oh, we're going to Delaware. What's in Delaware?
Delaware?
Documents next to a Corvette. Oh! Yeah. Sorry.
So I think that's a thought, back to what we were saying, that you probably need to think about out of the gate. Is this going to be your lifestyle? Which is very cool. There are a lot of people that give others a hard time about buying a job. There's nothing wrong with that.
No.
But if you have plans or even have an inkling of creating something that you think is going to be has longevity or sellable in the future, you probably need to start from the get-go thinking about that, so that you can either scale it bigger through systems or software, or have it sellable and not be the face.
It's a lot easier to go from a sellable business down to a lifestyle business than it is from a lifestyle up to...
That's probably the smartest thing you said today.
But well, thank you. Just 10:15. We'll see if I can add to it. But no,
and we got that on recording.
We did. But I mean, it's always easier to go down a peg than it is to come up.
And I think that's true. I mean, if something happens and you put all your systems in a document and so, and you did everything correctly, and you just retire and it goes away, there's really no harm. You would actually probably run your business better to begin with. But going from, like I did, has been a 3 to 4 year process for us.
Yeah, well,
to try and move it.
And I don't want to... I know that you feel that way, but I think people need to understand that sometimes when you make the decision to get into a business, you're not in a season where you can consider something larger at that time. I mean, at the point where you were starting all of this, it was a lifestyle business because you needed
money. Yeah.
And you can't always wait to do something on a grand scale. You've got to be able to live.
Yeah.
So there are reasons why you start with the one and then transfer to the other. But now, like if you were going to start a new business right now, you wouldn't start on the lifestyle side because you don't have to.
Yeah.
So there's reasons for it.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
That's a good point. A lot of times, most small businesses may start out of necessity.
Yeah.
You
got to eat.
I got laid off my job. I really like it. I'm going to start my own machine shop. Mm-hmm. So they just start taking orders and fabricating stuff without really thinking about, how do I sell to Delaware?
Yeah.
Or something like that. So
they're just thinking, I got to make my car payment or my mortgage. And that's okay. So now I'm gonna hit you with one right now that you aren't expecting. We have been discussing, do we go into other states and start from the ground up, or do we go into other states through acquisition on different things?
All right. Well, thank you for joining us.
As we were talking, a thought came to mind. We talk about goodwill, and we talk about some of the issue we had opening up in another state already.
Yeah.
Part of that issue is that they don't know us. So isn't another excellent reason for acquisition the fact that if you can acquire the correct business that is established there that people are using and people know, that makes more fiscal sense than spending a bunch of money and then spending a bunch of money in marketing to try to break in and then have it take the 20 years that it's taken to get to where you are now here.
So the question I hear you asking, is how valuable is goodwill?
Yeah.
I think probably you had a better handle on it than I did when I first started thinking about acquiring this company. Because if you're out there, that's always the big debate that Joe and I are having.
Yep.
Is do you spend $250,000 on a company that you could theoretically start for 40 or 50, but no one knows your name in there?
Yep.
I don't know. I think that there are definite. There's a number somewhere.
Yeah. I thoroughly agree with that.
I don't know how to explain that number. We looked at a school that was $1.6 million.
Yeah.
And the guy said, "Well, is that too high a price?" And I said, price is really not the issue; it's the value.
Yes.
Is it worth a $1.6 million, or is it worth $300 and you want $1.6? And at that point, in that particular conversation, I told Joe, I said, for half of that, we could start the business, spend the other $700,000 on Google AdWords, and potentially compete against him.
Yep.
So I was actually giving no value to the goodwill of that business. Have I rethought my answer? Yes. The company we are acquiring now, it is the goodwill. The price on this is far below what I think we would spend to try and get his 20 years of.
Oh, I agree. I mean, I think almost to an extent. I mean, it's not supply and demand, but it's similar to that. It's finding that equilibrium point of, if I buy this business and they're making X dollars currently, if I'm buying it and I can make my money back within, let's say, 2 to 4 years. Yeah. Let's say that's the window. If I can make my money back and break even in that time point, in that time frame, it's probably worth the acquisition.
Well,
if it's going to take longer than that, I mean, if it's going to take me 5 to 10 years, I can probably start from ground zero and within 10 years get to where I'm going to go.
So, without getting too technical in the accounting, there's a term called EBITDA. EBITDA, earnings before interest, taxes, and something else. I don't know. Basically, it's the net income that owner is making.
Yes.
All right? And when you buy a company, you buy it at some ratio of that EBITDA. And what you just eloquently defined was most companies or most verticals, categories, have a well accepted ratio.
Yeah.
So, for instance, in this particular case, it's like 2.5.
Yeah.
So you are exactly right. We're paying 2.5 times the income that this guy's earning. If he would have been asking 5 times, and that speaks to what you're saying. So it's almost like a cap rate.
Yeah.
In the commercial world, where someone's looking to buy a building, and if the seller's saying, I want a 12 cap rate, and the buyer's like, no, I don't, I need to buy at an 8 cap rate. It's the same concept.
Yes.
I don't want to spend 12 times what he's earning to buy the company, because theoretically that would take 12 years to recoup my money.
Yeah.
That's way too much for a service industry. Now, you see tech companies, and I think I remember at one point Tesla was like 43 times the earnings. You were paying 43 times what he was earning, and he defended himself in a town hall type meeting when one guy said, hey, why would I spend 43? And he said, well, if I were you, I wouldn't. But I have a much better chance of getting to space and doing this than some of the other companies, and that's what you're paying for. So, like 15 to 20
opportunity
times.
cost.
Yeah, he was charging for an opportunity cost, but I thought it was kind of cool because Elon Musk said, well, if I were you, I wouldn't.
Yeah.
But,
however,
so yeah, I would say if you're looking to purchase a business, and we can do a whole nother show on this, actually, 2 to 5 years, especially as tech companies. If you're buying a tech company, like, hey, I was going to go out and buy Twitter.
Yeah.
There is that's a bad example because Twitter has no income, so theoretically it should be 0, but it wasn't. And that's how tech companies sell, because they do sell on the ability to leverage their 40 million users, either in some form of data mining or ad revenue. So tech companies actually trade really high, 15 to 17 times, with the idea that the new owner is going to somehow increase that income more than it currently is and be worth more by leveraging the platform. But in this particular case, I think we're at 2.5 times. But like you and I have talked about, in this particular situation, it is poorly managed, and there are other ways to make income off of what he has in his stable that he's not using.
Correct.
So if we merely did exactly what he's doing, it would be 2.5 years. If we tweaked it enough where we could up the income, we could shove that down to maybe repaying for it in a year.
Yeah.
And I think we can, because there are some issues that he is leaving money on the table.
Back in my mind, I was thinking 18 months because it probably takes us 6 months to get things where we want it to get.
I think we can easily take 2.5 down to 18 months.
Yeah.
And recoup the money, and then it's free money.
Well, and I'll be honest. There's no way we wouldn't get through the regulatory in 14 states in 18 months. So that adds some value to what's going on.
Yeah, and that actually kind of goes back to the last show a couple weeks ago where we talked about an asset sale versus a stock sale.
Yes.
And you were with me yesterday when we got a call from another guy who clearly did not understand the regulatory process, because he said the same thing to us about, I can start this business for way cheaper than you're paying for it. And we had to go through the process of explaining to him, dude, you got to get the company registered, you got to get school registered, you got to have an instructor, blah, 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 blah. All that will be done day one.
And we have the ability to, because we've gone through some of that.
Yes.
We have a little experience in understanding that, where, sometimes people don't. But I mean, that's...
And if you're listening, the state of Florida, get your shit together.
You do so many things so well, but no one can ever contact anyone or answer a question. That is annoying.
And it took, 4 months, 5 months just to get the company in state of Indiana. You can apply for a name and get approved.
Yeah.
Almost the same day. It took
Can't buy a car on a Sunday, but we can get approved on a lot of things.
It took Florida 5 months to approve our business entity in the state of Florida.
Yeah. I mean, and that's where the rubber meets the road on trying to expand in our particular industry.
Yeah, especially if it's licensed required.
Yeah.
Any kind of
there's a lot of businesses where if it's not requiring, if we were selling a T-shirt and all we had to do was get a business entity, then yeah, you get the business entity and you go. But there's so much more so many more moving parts and different people that have to touch it, and you got to get this person's blessing to go to this person to get a blessing. Oh, and you didn't get that person, so then you got to go back here.
That was one of the big problems. It was a chain of events. You couldn't do 4 things simultaneously because number 2 required number 1's blessing, and then number 3 had to have 2 in 1, and number 4 had to have 1, 2, and 3.
And then the roadmap for it is terrible. It's not like we were just talking about the manual for your business. It's not like you can go there and they have a 100-step thing and you go right down the list.
Yeah.
It's like you start on this one and then you jump over here and then there's 50 steps for this.
Yeah.
It just
and
is.
And then you go back and see that person again.
So you spend a lot of time
So there
waiting.
is some advantage to buying, back to the question you asked, buying an existing course, especially if they are licensed with a state.
Yeah.
And I mean specific professional license, not, I got to have a business to sell my T-shirts. That's much easier than I've got to have a business to teach real estate, because then that you're involved with the professional licensing agency, you've got the Department of Revenue, you've got the business entity itself in Florida.
Well, and just on simple things, business entity license, then you have to have the license for the school, then you have to have a license to teach the course, then you have to have every course, then you have to have a licensed instructor approved.
Then we haven't even got to building the course yet.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, it's not for the faint of heart. I mean, it just...
The other thing I would suggest, if you're scaling in multiple states, and there is a company called Harbor Compliance.
Yes.
We do not endorse them. They don't sponsor the show. Matter of fact, we don't even currently use them yet, but we are going to probably have to. That tracks all of our licenses for us.
Yes.
That tells us, hey, this license is coming due, this license, because now we're going to, like I said, have 14 states, plus our real estate would be a 15th, 16th, 17th state.
Yeah, and the positive of what they do, they got 2 tracks. One where they just track it, and then you have to do everything. But their second one is they'll track it and they'll submit all of the reports to make sure that it keeps going.
So that's something else in that scaling factor, back to the systems, that if you're thinking of doing that, that's a system that you need to understand, because what you don't want is one of your business entity reports to be missed a deadline, and then your company gets administratively shut down, so I hear. And then you have to jump through a bunch of hoops to get it reinstated. And I missed a business entity report by 3 days, and it took me almost 4 weeks to correct it.
Yeah.
Now it is corrected and it's back as an active company, but it sure would have been good to not miss that report.
You think?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So think about that as one of your systems if you're scaling. The other thing is, and we have got an accountant that we are talking to, because Joe brought up a good point. If we're selling something in Florida that's a digital download, but it's originating in Indiana, do we actually need a business in Florida? Because our business is originating out of Indiana.
Yep.
That is something that I don't know if there's new laws that, with the advent of this fad called the internet, I'm sure that has been addressed.
I'm sure. We just don't know.
We just don't know.
If you know,
send us an email.
Or comment on the YouTube thing.
Yeah.
I mean, we'd love to hear from you.
Because Joe has a postulate theory that I kind of agree with, that we shouldn't have to apply as a business in Florida.
We're a business in Indiana.
And that's where
sells goods
all
everywhere.
the origination of that is coming from. Do we need a business entity? I don't know.
Yep.
Well, currently we do, which is the reason for the harbor compliance or some sort of software that keeps track of all your licenses for that. Well, I think
That was
we've
a mouthful.
managed to meander our way through that, and I'm not sure we can give them any.
Welcome to our diatribe. This is a daily thing.
Yeah.
You only see
Yeah.
a few short minutes of how our day goes.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you for joining us, and come back again.
yes.
And
Harumph.
Dave Grenoble, I hope you can hear this.
Yeah, we're assuming you can hear this one today. Have a lovely day. Harumph.